Roberto De Zerbi, he has attracted a lot of attention and even from some of the best coaches such as Pep Guardiola saying his impact will be massive in the future. But how does his Brighton team set up and what are his key philosophies? As you can see, De Zerbi sets up in a 4-2-3-1, but this quickly begins to look more like a 4-2-4. The central striker almost always drops in alongside the number 10, the two wingers being the highest outlets on the pitch, leaving the lower block of 6 and the goalkeeper to be the mainstay in build-up. So, De Zerbi's philosophy, finding the spare man is key, building and breeding confidence through his players and his side, a hands-on approach where they focus on the finer details in every aspect of play and having the dare to dream attitude, wanting to achieve the absolute best in every position possible. Now let's take a look at the build-up structure and that block of 6 towards the back. So you've got the goalkeeper, you've got the 2 wide centre-backs, you've got the 2 full-backs holding width, and then you've got the narrow pivot in the middle. The idea here is to bait the press. These 6 players and the goalkeeper, they want the opposition players to come and man mark, push onto them, and that will create space in behind for the other forward players to get on the ball, raise the tempo, and then attack. This is an example of the space left in behind for the likes of Lallana and Ferguson to then pick up the ball in that space. As previously mentioned, De Zerbi wants to create overloads to open space in behind, and here is an example of him doing just that. This graphic shows how if the 6 players in possession drop into deeper areas of the pitch, the 2 players in the centre of the pitch will then drop into the gap left between the midfield line and the centre-backs. That will then leave space either behind for the wingers to run into or space in the pocket for Lallana and Ferguson or whoever's playing in that striker and number 10 role. Now let's take a look at one of De Zerbi's key factors in build-up, which is third-man combinations. One of the key components of this is midfielders operating at staggered heights so that there's passing angles open up so that they could play through the press. This can be seen here with Gilmour's position being taken up with the player pushed up on him, which makes space for Gross to open up a passing angle, and then between them they can create an option for a third-man combination. Here's an in-game example of this, going forwards into the press where there's a player between 4 Arsenal players to draw the Arsenal players back and press them towards the ball to then come backwards, creating space for that third man. And here is a different example of the same combination. Dunk can't find the ball straight into the pivot, so he uses a third man combination going across to then get between the 2 Arsenal players and find that passing gate forwards. Another one of De Zerbi's finer details is cover shadowing, so one of the pivot players coming further towards the ball and causing the other player to either have to follow them all the way up or stand off and stay in their shape, which creates a massive gap that they have to cover when they are going between the 2 players. By creating this decision for the opposition defender, they can't go both ways, so it's going to open up an advantage for De Zerbi's side in one area of the pitch, whether that is deeper for Billy Gilmour or higher up the pitch for Lallana. This image shows an in-game example of a Brighton player playing in the shadow behind the forward man pressing. This gives the defender behind him a decision to make as to whether to jump up and close that space down so that he cannot receive the ball in this area, but therefore leaving space behind, or to stay where he is and let the player in the middle receive the ball and dictate. But how does De Zerbi deal with low blocks? This is something that many people think he has an issue with, but my counter-argument to that is I think a lot of top managers, even the very best, have issues breaking down low blocks because low blocks are supposed to be hard to break down. You are looking to fill the box with players and have your best players getting into the positions that they can affect the game. So the likes of Matoma getting into 1v1 positions so that he can then cross it into the box and have attackers attacking the ball in the box. The same there for Pascal Gross a minute ago. He had space to cross the ball, one of the better deliverers of the ball in the team, and then he's got plenty of options to pick out in the box. Something to take into account is that beating lower blocks usually comes down to that extra bit of quality from your players, that individual bit of spark and excellence. This is something that Brighton don't have in comparison to some of the big top clubs. Now let's move on to some of De Zerbi's defensive principles and weaknesses. De Zerbi employs an aggressive man-to-man press, trying to force the ball long so that they can win the ball back and regain control of possession. When they do drop off, they tend to drop into a 4-4-2 block, and their rest defence shape tends to be a 2-3, which tends to leave quite a lot of space in the channels for long direct passes. De Zerbi being a coach that values the ball, he wants his team to go man for man and try and win the ball back as quickly as possible. The aim is to either win the ball back high up and attack instantly, or to force the ball long, as you can see Raya doing here for Arsenal, and then try and win the duels to then recover possession, regain control of the game. By aggressively pressing man-to-man, they are forcing the opposition team to try and play riskier passes through the lines, which are of course harder to do, which means there is more chance of the ball being turned over and allowing Brighton to get back on the ball and control the game as they want to. However, their main weakness comes from their rest defence structure, which, as I said, is a 2-3-5. As you can see here, Brighton have the ball in that 2-3 shape because they have sustained possession and they have pushed one of their pivot players forwards. This means that if the ball does break over, their rest defence position is that 2-3 structure behind the 5 attackers. And this leads me to my main point with Zerbi and the biggest weakness of his Brighton teams, which is channel runners in behind. By having the fullbacks higher up and inverted in the rest defence structure, it leaves the 2 centre-backs a lot more vulnerable when balls are put over the top into the channels, meaning they have to come wider to defend, as you can see in this image with the 2 centre-backs and the 2 Arsenal attackers. This holds a lot of responsibility for the 2 centre-backs to be able to get across, cover these positions, cover a lot of ground and make big tackles and win duels. So now that you have an understanding as to how Zerbi's Brighton play, how could Zerbi's Chelsea look? This is the Chelsea team that I've put together based on personnel that I think could be at the club next year, so I've left out the likes of Gallagher and Chalobah just because I think there's a good chance they could leave, and also based on who I think Zerbi would like in each position based on their playing qualities. First, we'll address the big ones, Caicedo and Colwill. They've both played under Zerbi, they both know the build-up structure to a T, they already know to put their studs on the ball to lure the press, they already know these fundamentals of Zerbi's play. They know how to build up from the back, and they will be perfect to execute it, and it will also help bedding Zerbi into the club quicker, having these 2 players that already understand his system. Another player Zerbi has already worked with is Mykhailo Mudryk, who he worked with at Shakhtar, and he has even gone on to say that Mykhailo Mudryk has the potential to win a Ballon d'Or, so he clearly has a lot of confidence in Mudryk as a player. I believe Roberto Zerbi would be the perfect manager to get the best out of Mykhailo Mudryk, providing him with the confidence and structure that he really does need. His ability to go 1v1 when he is confident and he is left in those 1v1 isolations will be perfect for Zerbi's system. He's got the ball striking to cut inside, the speed to get down the outside and put balls into the box, and of course the pace to run in behind and stretch the opposition team. Now let's talk about Enzo Fernandez, who I think would absolutely thrive in Roberto Zerbi's system. His ability to drop deep and link play, be part of those third-man combinations due to his high football IQ and his passing range to beat the press and play through the lines would be absolutely perfect for Roberto Zerbi, and you would see Enzo Fernandez shining. This is an example of the third-man combinations that you could see with Enzo and Caicedo playing in the middle together. These types of combinations allow Enzo to get the ball facing forward and pick those really killer long balls into the channels and in behind, where we can then create attacking chances from this, which will get the best out of his passing range. Now, I've already spoke about Levi Colwill, but I want to speak about Wesley Fofana, and then I will also go on to Reece James and Malo Gusto. But with Wesley Fofana, he's the perfect player to play as one of those wide centre-backs for Roberto Zerbi. As I said earlier, they need to cover a lot of ground and win duels. This is perfect for Fofana because it allows him to be aggressive, use his power, use his body and use his strength to get in and win duels for Chelsea, to win the ball back and to ensure that there's no counter-attacks by putting the ball into the channel for other teams. I also believe you could get the best out of Reece James and Malo Gusto in these areas because they're good enough to invert. They're so good on the ball that when Chelsea do hold the ball in possession, those 2 inverting into midfield would be really nice to just keep the ball circulating. And then it also means in rest defence, you have 2 very good recovery defenders in those inverted fullback positions. This is that rest defence structure I'm talking about. Now let's talk about these 2, Angelo and Noni Madueke, 1v1 specialists that could thrive under Roberto Zerbi by being put in the positions to go 1v1 and be confident in their ability to do things and create things in the game. These wide players under Zerbi are put into these 1v1 isolations a lot through design. They are used to carry the ball forwards, to beat their man and to start attacks by beating their fullback or cutting inside and shooting. This is something that Angelo and Madueke both do at a very high clip. And lastly, I'm going to mention Nicholas Jackson. Even though there could be another striker coming to Chelsea in the summer, we'll touch on that in a different video. But Nicholas Jackson, I do think would work really well under Zerbi when I've compared his numbers with Danny Welbeck. Jackson's ability to drop in between the lines, as Zerbi has his strikers do, to receive the ball in the pocket, hold the ball up, but also turn out and drive the team forward when possible. This is something that Jackson does exceptionally well. Jackson is very comfortable receiving the ball with his back to goal, but also using his body to manipulate the defender and turn and start attacks from this position, which is very important for a De Zerbi striker. It's also worth mentioning Cole Palmer, who I think would be utilised as more of a number 10 for Chelsea under Roberto De Zerbi. Again, his ability to receive the ball between the lines, break the press, and even be part of those third-man combinations would be key. This is something Christopher Nkunku could also do. I think Nkunku could actually play in either of those two forward roles, whether that be in the 10 or in the striker. So let me know what you think of Roberto De Zerbi. Do you think he could work at Chelsea? Would anything about him worry you if he was to come to Chelsea? And is there any other managers that you would like me to cover? Because I've now done Amorim and De Zerbi. I've got a few more in the pipeline and I'm trying to compile a list of managers I can do. Let me know down below. Please do like, comment and subscribe, as I do think I deserve it.